The music box arrived on a Tuesday, wrapped in brown paper with my name written in my husband's handwriting. It was small, it was old-looking, and the moment I wound it up and let it play, something inside the house shifted in a way I still cannot fully explain. I thought it was beautiful, I thought it was romantic. I thought Marcus had finally done something that showed me he still saw me, still thought of me, still cared about the woman he had married 3 years ago and slowly started to forget. But when I told him over the phone that his sister Renata had been in the house that afternoon and had gone completely still when she heard the music, Marcus did not ask what song it played. He did not ask if Renata had said something. He did not ask if everything was okay. His voice just went dead, total silence. The kind of silence that is not an accident, and in that silence I understood that the music box was never meant for me at all. Before this story goes any further, I want to ask you something honest. If someone you loved sent you something beautiful and you later found out that the beautiful thing had a meaning you were never supposed to understand, what would you do? Would you ask questions? Would you stay quiet and watch? Or would you wait until you knew enough to make one move that could not be undone? Think about that as you listen. Because that is exactly the choice Nadia had to make. Nadia had not always been someone who paid close attention to objects. She was practical by nature. She noticed people, patterns, tone of voice, the small hesitations before someone answered a question. She had grown up in a house where words were not always honest, so she had learned early to read what was underneath the words. But objects, things, items sitting on shelves or wrapped in paper, those had never felt important to her. Until the music box arrived and changed everything she thought she knew about her own marriage. She was 31 years old when this happened. She had been married to Marcus Hale for 3 years. They lived in a mid-sized house in a quiet part of the city, the kind of neighborhood where people kept their front yards clean and their problems private. Marcus worked in project management for a construction firm. He traveled for work 3 or 4 times a month, sometimes for 2 or 3 days at a time, sometimes for a full week. Nadia worked as a medical billing specialist from home, which meant she was in the house most days alone doing careful detailed work that required her full concentration. She was good at her job. She was organized, thorough, and rarely made mistakes. She brought in a steady income that, combined with Marcus's salary, had let them build a reasonably comfortable life. From the outside, their marriage looked solid. They had a shared bank account for household expenses. They had a dog named Pepper, a small brown terrier who followed Nadia everywhere. They had a regular routine of Saturday dinners with Marcus's family, which included his mother Diane, his younger brother Corey, and his sister Renata. Nadia had tried hard with all of them. She had cooked for them, remembered their birthdays, listened to their problems, and never once complained when Marcus's family took up more of his attention and energy than she did. She had told herself that was what a good partner did. She had told herself patience was a form of love. But the truth, if Nadia was being fully honest with herself, was that things had not felt right for a long time. Marcus had grown quieter over the past year, not cold, not obviously unkind, but quieter in a way that had a specific shape to it. He would answer her questions, but he would not offer anything on his own. He would sit next to her on the couch, but he would not reach for her hand. He would come home from his work trips and describe the meetings and the flights, but he would never describe what he had been thinking about. She had brought it up twice. He had said work was stressful. She had believed him because she wanted to believe him and because she did not yet have any reason not to. The music box arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in early March. Nadia was at her desk finishing a billing report when she heard the mail slot. She did not get up right away. She finished the section she was working on, saved her file, and then walked to the front door. There was the usual small stack of envelopes, but sitting on top of them was a small brown paper package about the size of a shoebox, though flatter and lighter. Her name was written on it in Marcus's handwriting. There was no return address. There was a small piece of folded paper taped to the side. She stood in the hallway and opened the note first. It said simply, "I saw this and thought of you. Wind it up when the house is quiet. It will sound right. Love, M." Nadia looked at the note for a moment. Marcus had not written her a handwritten note in probably 2 years. He usually sent texts. "One's on my way, got stuck in traffic. Dinner at Mom's this Saturday, okay?" She turned the note over looking for more, but there was nothing. She opened the package carefully. Inside was a music box. It was made of dark polished wood about the size of a thick hardcover book. The lid had a small inlaid design on it, what looked like a bird sitting on a branch done in a lighter wood. It was genuinely beautiful. She turned it over and found the small key on the bottom. She wound it slowly, then set it on the hallway table and lifted the lid. The song that played was not one she recognized immediately. It was delicate and a little melancholy, a series of high, clear notes that seemed to float. It was the kind of music that made a quiet house feel even quieter in a way that was almost pleasant. Nadia stood there and listened to the whole song play out, and something in her chest softened a little. She thought maybe Marcus is trying, maybe he felt the distance too, and this is his way of closing it. She picked up her phone and sent him a text. "The music box is beautiful. Where did you find it?" He replied about 2 hours later. "Antique shop near the hotel. Glad you like it." She set the music box on the small table in the living room near the window. She wound it up again before bed and let it play while she read. Pepper curled up next to her and the song filled the room. She fell asleep thinking that maybe she had been too worried, too focused on what was missing instead of what was still there. The next morning, Renata came by. This was not unusual on its own. Renata was 34, 2 years older than Marcus, and she had a habit of dropping by unannounced. She and Marcus were close, always had been, and Renata treated Nadia's house more like a family station than a private home. She would knock once and then open the door if Nadia did not answer fast enough. She would open the refrigerator, use the bathroom, scroll through her phone on the couch, and talk about herself for 40 minutes before leaving. Nadia had never loved these visits, but she had never created a real problem over them either. She had smiled, offered tea, and waited for Renata to leave. That morning, Renata arrived at 10. Nadia was in the middle of a work call, so she gestured for Renata to wait in the living room. When she came out 20 minutes later, Renata was standing in the middle of the room very still, staring at the music box on the window table. Nadia asked her if she wanted tea. Renata did not answer right away. She turned and looked at Nadia with an expression that was strange, not angry, not guilty, something more complicated than that, something that looked almost like she was calculating something very quickly. Then she smiled and said yes to the tea and sat down on the couch. Nadia went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. When she came back, Renata was sitting with her hands in her lap, not scrolling her phone like she usually did. She was looking toward the music box again. Nadia asked if she liked it. Renata said it was interesting. Nadia said Marcus had sent it. Renata said oh, and her voice was flat in a way that did not match the word. They drank tea. Renata talked about a problem at her job and a disagreement she had with a friend. She stayed for about 30 minutes and then said she had to go. She did not mention the music box again. But when she hugged Nadia goodbye at the door, there was a stiffness in her arms that had not been there before. Nadia noticed it. She filed it away. That evening, she called Marcus. He was in the middle of a work trip somewhere in another city. She told him about her day, about finishing the billing report, about Pepper getting into the trash, about the neighbor's new car, and then she said almost casually, "Your sister stopped by this morning." Marcus made a small sound of acknowledgement. She said she seemed to react a bit strangely to the music box. She went quiet when she saw it, and that was when it happened. Marcus stopped talking. Not the pause of someone thinking, a full stop, a silence that had wait, like someone had pressed a button and turned off sound. Nadia waited. After several seconds, Marcus said, "What do you mean she reacted to it?" His voice was different, controlled in a specific way, the way a voice gets when someone is trying to hold something very carefully. Nadia said she just seemed startled by it, like she recognized it. Marcus said Renata probably just thought it was pretty. Nadia said she didn't say it was pretty, she went still like she knew it. Another pause, then Marcus said he had to go, someone was calling him for the meeting. He said he'd call her back, he did not call her back that night. Nadia sat with the music box in front of her for a long time after that phone call. She wound it up and let it play. She listened to the song again, all the way through, and she thought about what it meant that Marcus's voice had gone dead at the exact moment. She mentioned that Renata had recognized it. She thought about what it meant that he hadn't asked a single follow-up question. She thought about what it meant that someone who claimed to love her had gone suddenly, carefully silent when confronted with the simplest detail. She did not sleep well that night. The next morning, she started doing what she was good at. She started paying attention. Nadia had a specific way of working through problems that came from years of dealing with complicated billing records. She did not leap to conclusions. She gathered information first. She looked at what was present and what was missing. She noticed where the data did not add up, and she kept a record. She started with the music box itself. She looked at it carefully in the morning light. The wood was old but well kept. The inlay on the lid was precise and beautiful. She photographed it on all sides. She turned it over and looked at the small metal plate on the bottom, the one she had overlooked when she first opened it. There were letters stamped into the metal, not a manufacturer's mark. Initials, EVH. She stared at those letters. Marcus's last name was Hale. The H could fit. But the E and the V did not belong to anyone in his family that she knew of. She searched online for music boxes with that kind of inlay design. She searched antique music box manufacturers. She searched the style, the period, the type of song. It took her most of the morning. What she found was that this style of music box was made in limited numbers in Eastern Europe in the 1970s and 80s and was considered a collector's piece. They were not something you found in a random antique shop near a hotel. They were sought out deliberately. They were purchased through specific dealers or personal sales. Someone had known exactly where to get this. She called Marcus that afternoon. She asked him directly where exactly he had found the music box, which shop, which city. Did he remember the name? Marcus said he could not remember the name. It was just a small place near the hotel. He had walked by it. She asked which city he had been in. He told her. She looked up every antique shop in that city. There were 11. She called 4 of them that afternoon. None of them carried music boxes of that type. She called 3 more the next day. Same answer. She did not confront Marcus with this yet. She just continued paying attention. Over the next 2 weeks, she noticed things she had been moving past for months. Marcus's phone, which he used to leave on the kitchen counter when he got home, now stayed in his pocket or in the bedroom, always face down. He had switched to a phone password he had not shared with her, which he said was because of work security, a policy his company had recently updated. He took longer showers when he got back from trips. He was considerate in small ways, attentive in the way someone is when they are managing guilt. He brought her coffee one morning without being asked. He suggested a movie night. He was present in all the surface ways and absent in the only way that actually mattered. Nadia watched, she said nothing yet, she kept building her understanding. Then came the Saturday dinner at Diane's house. These dinners happened most weeks. Diane, Marcus's mother, was a woman who ran her household like a small kingdom. She was in her early 60s, sharp-eyed, well-dressed, proud of her family in a way that also served her own image. She had always been polite to Nadia, but it was the politeness of someone who tolerated rather than welcomed. Nadia had never been fully inside the circle of Diane's warmth, and she had accepted that a long time ago. She sat at those Saturday tables and passed food and smiled and answered questions about her job and tried not to feel like a guest in her own marriage. That particular Saturday, something was different from the moment she walked in. Corey was there, Marcus's younger brother, which was normal. But there was also a woman Nadia had not met before, sitting at the far end of the table with easy familiarity like she had been there many times. She was about Nadia's age, maybe a year or two younger, with short hair and quiet eyes. She was introduced as Alina, no last name, just Alina, a friend of Renata's. Nadia sat across from Alina during dinner. Alina was pleasant and careful, the kind of pleasant that has been practiced. She spoke mostly to Renata. She knew details about Diane's garden, Corey's new job, a trip the family had taken the previous summer. She knew these things the way someone knows them when they have been paying attention for a while. Marcus was seated at the other end of the table from Nadia. He talked to his mother and to Corey. He laughed at something Corey said. He did not look at Alina in a way that was obvious. He did not avoid looking at her either. He was careful. Nadia watched his carefulness like it was data. At one point during dinner, Renata leaned across the table. Ian told Nadia that Alina was thinking about taking up a hobby, some kind of music or art, and she looked at Nadia when she said it, not at Alina. She looked at Nadia with that same calculating expression from the day she had stood in Nadia's living room staring at the music box. Nadia smiled and said that sounded lovely, and she stored that moment carefully. After dinner, Nadia helped Diane clear the dishes. In the kitchen, Diane made a comment about how it was good that Marcus had been getting out more, seeing friends, doing things for himself. She said it in a light tone, like it was casual, like it was kind. But the word friends landed with a specific weight, and Diane looked at Nadia just a fraction of a second too long after saying it. Nadia smiled and agreed and brought the plates to the counter. She did not let anything show on her face. On the drive home, Marcus talked about Corey's job situation. He asked if Nadia had enjoyed dinner. She said yes. She asked him how he knew Alina. He said she was an old friend of Renata's from her earlier work years, someone the family had stayed in touch with. He said it easily, the way a rehearsed line sounds easy. Nadia said she seemed nice. Marcus agreed, and they drove the rest of the way home in the kind of silence that had become very familiar. That night after Marcus fell asleep, Nadia sat in the living room with the music box. She wound it up, she let it play, she looked at those initials again. EVH, she thought about Alina at the dinner table, knowing all the family details, laughing at the right moments, sitting with the ease of someone who belonged. She thought about Renata's face when she had first seen the music box. And she thought about Marcus's dead voice on the phone. She pulled up her notebook and wrote down everything she had noticed over the past 2 weeks. Dates, small moments, the phone password, the antique shop calls, the initials, the dinner, Alina's full name, which she had quietly searched on Renata's social media that night. Alina Vera Hartley, EVH. She closed the notebook. She set it in the back of her closet behind a stack of work binders. She was not ready to move yet, but she was almost ready. She went back to the music box. She picked it up and turned it over in her hands. She understood now that Marcus had not bought this for her out of love or nostalgia or any impulse to close the distance between them. He had sent it to this house, to the house they shared, because someone had given it to him, or he had given it to someone, or it had lived somewhere else first and he had needed to move it, and putting it in Nadia's hands had seemed like the safest place. Or he had made a mistake. A sentimental mistake. He had forgotten for one moment that Nadia was observant, that she noticed things, that she filed them away. Whatever the reason, the music box was a thread, and Nadia intended to pull it. She started going further back. She looked at their shared account not because she expected to find anything obvious, but because patterns had their own kind of logic. She looked at the past 8 months of purchases, organizing them by date and category. Marcus handled most of his work expenses on a separate card that went through his company, so she was not looking for those. She was looking for the shape of his personal spending. What she found was not dramatic, it was quiet. A small jewelry shop purchased 8 months ago, categorized under gifts, never presented to her. A restaurant in a neighborhood they never visited together, twice in 4 months, dinner prices for two. A flower ordered to an address she did not recognize, the previous Valentine's Day, the same Valentine's Day he had told her he was traveling for work and had sent her a text with a heart emoji and promised to make it up to her when he got back. She sat with all of this information and did not feel the way she might have expected to feel. She had expected sorrow or rage or the particular sharp panic of having the floor disappear beneath you. Instead, she felt something quieter, a kind of settling. Like a long-held question had finally stopped being a question. Like the ache she had been explaining away for the better part of a year had just been given its real name. She felt sad, deeply sad, and then below the sadness, she felt something else. The clear and specific feeling of someone who has been lied to with patience and finally decides that patience has a limit. She was not going to make noise about this. She was not going to cry in front of Marcus or throw the music box across the room or call Renata and demand explanations. None of that would serve her. She thought about what she actually needed. She needed to know the full shape of what had happened. She needed to protect herself. And she needed to make sure that when she finally moved, she moved from a position of complete clarity. She called her friend Jasmine that week. Jasmine was one of the few people I have fully trusted. They had been friends since college, and Jasmine had a way of listening that did not rush to comfort. She just let Nadia talk. Nadia told her everything. The music box, the initials, the dead voice on the phone, Renata at the dinner table, Alina Vera Hartley, the jewelry shop, the restaurant, the Valentine's Day flowers. Jasmine listened to all of it without interrupting. When Nadia finished, Jasmine was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You already know what this is." Nadia said yes. Jasmine asked what she needed. Nadia said she needed a lawyer's name. Jasmine gave her one, a woman named Patricia Osei, a family law attorney with a direct reputation. Nadia called the office the next day and made an appointment for the following week. She told Marcus she had a dentist appointment that afternoon. The meeting with Patricia was 45 minutes, and it changed the shape of how Nadia saw the months ahead. Patricia was calm, factual, and precise. She explained Nadia's rights clearly. She explained what documentation would matter and what would not. She told Nadia that the house was in both names, that the shared account and assets were joint property, and that if Nadia was going to protect herself, she needed to start moving carefully and to stop moving money or making changes that could look reactive. She said, "Document everything you already have. Do not confront anyone yet. Do not give up the advantage of knowing more than they know you know." Nadia wrote everything down in a new notebook she bought specifically for this purpose. She walked out of that office feeling more like herself than she had in months. Not happy, not victorious, not healed. Just clear. Clear in the way that only comes when you stop pretending something is fine and start dealing with what is actually real. She went home, she made dinner. When Marcus came home from work, she asked him about his day. He talked about his meetings, and she listened and passed him the salt and said the right things, and when he sat down next to her on the couch after dinner and put on a show and seemed comfortable and safe in his carefully maintained normalcy, she sat next to him and thought, I know what I know, and I am not finished learning. The next layer of the story found her, rather than the other way around. 2 weeks after her meeting with Patricia, Nadia received an email. It came to her personal address, not her work one. The sender name was a first name only, a name she did not recognize. The subject line said just, "I think you should know something." She almost deleted it. She had a policy about emails like that. They were usually spam or someone's forwarded chain letter or occasionally something uncomfortable from a distant relative. But she had been in the mode of paying attention, so she opened it. The email was short. It said, "I don't know how to start this. I've been going back and forth for a month. Your name is Nadia. I've seen it written down. I know that you're married to Marcus Hale. I'm not trying to cause trouble, but I think you deserve to know that someone has been lying to you for a long time. I can send proof if you want it. I'll understand if you don't respond, but I think you deserve better than what you have right now." The email was signed with a first name, Dara. Nadia read it 3 times. She set her phone down. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat at the kitchen table with the cup in her hands and thought carefully about what to do with this. It could be nothing. It could be someone with a grudge against Marcus or Renata trying to use Nadia as a tool. It could also be exactly what it said it was, someone with information and a conscience. She wrote back. She kept her reply brief and careful. She said she had received the email and she was listening. She asked what kind of proof Dara had. The response came the next morning. Attached to it were 4 screenshots. One was a text conversation between Marcus and a contact named Only E in which he discussed meeting times and locations over the course of several months using language that left nothing ambiguous. One was a photograph taken at a restaurant of Marcus and Alina seated across from each other, close, in the specific posture of two people who are not just friends. One was a screenshot of an Instagram story, now deleted, from an account Nadia recognized as belonging to a friend of Alina's, showing what appeared to be a small music box with the caption, "She loves it." And the fourth was a bank transfer record, partial but legible, showing a transfer from a personal account into a name Nadia recognized as Alina's last name, on a date that was 3 weeks before the music box arrived at Nadia's house. Nadia sat with those screenshots for a long time. She saved them all in a secure folder. She forwarded them to her own backup email. She printed 2 copies, put one in the notebook in her closet, and mailed the other to Patricia's office with a note ref. Erensing her case file number. She responded to Dara. She said thank you. She asked if there was anything else. Dara replied and said there might be more, but she needed to be careful. She said she worked adjacent to someone who knew both Marcus and Alina and that she had been watching things unfold for a while and it had not sat right with her. She said she was sorry that Nadia was in this situation. Nadia wrote back and said she appreciated the risk Dara had taken. She meant it. She did not tell Marcus about the email. She did not tell Renata. She continued her regular routines. She went to Saturday dinners. She cooked. She asked Marcus about his trips. She listened. She smiled. She watched, and she continued to build. Patricia called her the following week. She had received the printed screenshots and had reviewed them. She told Nadia that these were meaningful, that combined with the financial records Nadia had already documented, they painted a clear picture. She said that if Nadia wanted to move forward, she could file within the next 30 to 60 days. She advised Nadia to begin separating certain financial matters carefully and legally, to open a personal account and begin directing a portion of her own income there, which Nadia was fully entitled to do, and to make no dramatic changes to the house or shared accounts that would signal anything. Nadia took every note. Over the next 3 weeks, she executed each step. She opened the personal account at a different bank. She updated her direct deposit for exactly half her paycheck into it, which was her legal right. She contacted a financial advisor named Gordon who Patricia had referred her to and who specialized in divorce asset planning. She had a 1-hour meeting with Gordon and understood clearly by the end of it what the financial picture of her life would look like if she moved forward. It was not easy, there would be difficulty, but she was not starting from nothing. She had her income, her skills, her credit, and 3 years of documented joint property. She was not helpless. She was, in fact, in a much stronger position than the people in her life seemed to believe. Then came the night that changed the visible shape of everything. It was a Thursday. Marcus was home. They had dinner together, a quiet dinner, the kind that had become normal. After dinner, he went to take a shower and Nadia stayed in the kitchen. His phone was on the counter, face down as usual. It buzzed twice. Nadia did not pick it up. But when she walked past it to put something in the recycling bin, she saw the notification preview on the screen before it faded. Just a few words from a contact labeled R, which could have been Renata. The words she saw were, "She can't know before you've moved the account." Nadia stood very still. She looked at the screen. The notification had faded. She walked back to the table and sat down. She thought about what she had just read. She can't know before you've moved the account. The account. Their joint household account. The one that held a significant amount of their shared savings. She went to her laptop. She logged into the joint account. The current balance was lower than the last time she had checked, about 3 weeks ago, noticeably lower. She checked the transaction history. There had been 4 transfers in the past 10 days, each one under a round number, each one going to the same external account. The receiving account was not labeled. The transfers totaled a number that was not catastrophic but was not small either. It was the kind of amount you could move quietly if you were careful about it. She made herself breathe normally. She screenshotted every transaction. She forwarded them to Patricia that same night with a message that said, "They are moving money out of the joint account. What do I do?" Patricia called her the following morning before 9. She told Nadia that this was actually very helpful, that it constituted financial misconduct within the marriage, and that it gave Nadia grounds to act faster and from a stronger legal position. She said Nadia should not touch the account, not add or remove anything, and should let the paper trail stand exactly as it was. She said she was ready to file as soon as Nadia gave the word. Nadia gave the word that same day. What happened in the next 72 hours was a sequence of things that moved quickly once they started, the way things always move quickly once you have waited patiently for the right moment and then stop waiting. The filing was quiet. That was how these things worked at first. The papers were prepared, they would be served. Nadia did not tell Marcus, she did not tell Renata, she did not call Diane. She went to Saturday dinner that weekend and smiled and passed the bread and listened to Corey talk about a sports game. Renata was watchful but said nothing. Alina was not there that week. Nadia ate her dinner and helped with the dishes and drove home with Marcus in tea. He quiet car and thought, this is the last or second to last time I will do this. And instead of feeling grief at that thought, she felt something that surprised her. She felt relief. The papers were served the following Tuesday morning. Marcus was home because he had a later start that day. Nadia had made sure to be out of the house before the process server arrived. She had told Marcus the night before that she had an early appointment. She drove to a coffee shop 2 miles away and sat with her laptop and her tea and worked on a billing file and waited. He called her at 9:47. She let it ring twice, composed herself, and answered. He said her name in a voice she had never quite heard from him before. Not the dead silence from the music box phone call, something different, something that mixed confusion and panic and a version of shame that had not yet decided what shape it wanted to take. He said, "Nadia, what is this?" She said, "I think you know what it is." He said, "Can you come home?" She said, "Not yet." He said her name again. She said, "Marcus, I know about Alina, I know about the restaurant. I know about the Valentine's flowers, I know about the music box and whose it really was, I know about the account transfers, and so does my attorney." He went quiet. She said, "I'll be home this afternoon," and she ended the call. She sat in the coffee shop for 20 more minutes. She finished her tea, she let herself feel fully and without trying to manage it, the weight of what she had just done. She felt sad, she felt the specific grief of the loss of something she had tried very hard to keep, she felt the loneliness of having been lied to in a house she had worked to help build, she let herself feel all of it, and then she paid for her tea, picked up her bag, and drove home. Marcus was in the kitchen when she arrived. He looked like a man who had been pacing. His shirt was untucked and his face had the stunned, slightly hollow expression of someone who had prepared for a confrontation they had not expected to actually arrive. He started talking the moment she walked in. He said it was complicated. He said he had not meant for it to go this far. He said he had been unhappy for a while and he should have talked to her, but he hadn't known how. He said Alina was someone from his past who had come back and he had made bad decisions and he was sorry. He said the account transfers were temporary, that he was going to put it all back, that he had just been scared. He said he still cared about her. He said they could talk to someone, a counselor. He said a lot of things. Nadia listened to all of it. She stood near the kitchen counter with her arms at her sides and her expression calm. She let him finish. Then she said, I hear everything you're saying, and I want you to know that I believe you believe all of it. But it doesn't change what I know, and it doesn't change what I've already put in motion. I'm not interested in explaining how long I've been paying attention or defending the decision I've made. I'm telling you as a courtesy that my attorney has been contacted, that the account transfers have been documented, and that this process is going to be orderly and quiet if you let it be. Marcus said he wanted to try to work on the marriage. Nadia said she understood. She said she had wanted to work on the marriage too for the better part of a year and she had waited and watched and asked and the answer she had gotten was not something she was willing to build on. She said she was not angry, which surprised her as she said it because it was true. She was not performing calm. She was genuinely past the stage of rage. She was in the stage that comes after, the one where clarity has replaced confusion and the path forward is no longer a question. She told him she would be staying in the house for now, per her attorney's advice, and that they would need to have a conversation about how to manage the space respectfully while things were being worked out. She said she hoped they could be decent to each other. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table. He looked like something had gone out of him. She almost felt sorry for him, the way you feel sorry for someone who created their own situation and is now surprised to find themselves in it, but she did not let that soften her position. Over the following days, the news moved through the family with the speed that family news always travels. Renata was the first to call. Nadia expected this. Renata called 2 days after the papers were served and her tone was one Nadia had not heard from her before, a kind of careful, measured outrage that was not entirely sure where to direct itself. She said she was shocked, which Nadia did not believe. She said she hoped Nadia wasn't making a rash decision, which made Nadia almost want to laugh. She said Marcus was her brother and she loved him, but she had always wanted good things for Nadia too. Nadia said thank you, Renata, she said sh. E appreciated the concern. She said the decision had been made carefully and she was at peace with it. Renata said maybe they should all talk, the family together, to see if something could be done. Nadia said there was nothing to be done, but she appreciated the offer. After she hung up, she thought about Renata standing in her living room staring at the music box. She thought about Renata at the dinner table, watching Nadia with those calculating eyes. She thought about the text Marcus had received from R. She can't know before you've moved the account. She filed that away with everything else. Diane called the next day. Diane's call was different. It was not outrage or careful neutrality. It was disappointment directed not at Marcus, which would have made sense, but at Nadia, which said everything Nadia needed to know about where Diane had always truly stood. Diane said marriage was hard and that giving up was easy and that she had hoped Nadia would be stronger than this. Nadia listened to all of it without interrupting. When Diane finished, Nadia said with complete steadiness, Diane, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I want you to know that this was not easy and it was not fast, and I spent a very long time trying to be exactly as strong as you're describing. I simply reached a different conclusion about what strength looks like. I hope you can respect that. Diane made a sound that was not agreement and ended the call. Corey texted, just a short message that said, sorry this is happening, hope you're okay. It was the most human response she received from that family, and she appreciated it more than Corey would probably ever know. Jasmine came over that Friday evening with food. They sat on the couch with containers of her favorite takeout and pepper wedged between them, and Nadia talked and cried a little, not dramatically, just the quiet kind of crying that is really just the body releasing something it has been holding for too long. Jasmine listened and said all the right things, which were mostly just versions of, you did the right thing and you are going to be okay. Nadia believed her. Not completely, not yet, but enough to move forwards. The weeks that followed were a mix of difficult logistics and surprising calm. The legal process was orderly, as Nadia had asked for it to be. Marcus cooperated once his attorney was involved, which was mostly because the financial misconduct of the account transfers had put him in a position where cooperation was clearly in his interest. The joint assets were evaluated, the house was appraised. Nadia had several meetings with Patricia and several with Gordon. She learned more about her own finances in those weeks than she had in the previous 3 years, and there was something unexpectedly grounding in that knowledge. In knowing exactly what she had, in understanding the real numbers of her own life. The music box sat on the window table through all of this. She did not touch it for a while, then one morning she picked it up and wound it and listened to the song again. She thought about Alina Vera Hartley, who she had never confronted and never planned to. She thought about what the music box had been before it arrived in her house. A gift, maybe, a token of something between two people, and then it had been moved. Sent to Nadia's house, given a new story, repurposed as a gesture of affection that was actually a strange kind of carelessness. The idea that Marcus had sent her something that belonged to someone else, something that carried another woman's initials and another woman's song, and had trusted that Nadia would never know, said something about how little he had been paying attention to who she actually was. She was the kind of person who noticed. She was the kind of person who remembered. She was the kind of person who kept records. She had been in his life for 3 years. That should not have been a surprise to him. About 6 weeks after the filing, something happened that Nadia had not fully anticipated. She received another email from Dura. This one was longer. Dura said she had been thinking about reaching out again and had decided to because she thought Nadia should know that the situation involving Marcus and Alina was not exactly a secret in a broader circle of people. Dura said that within a loose network of mutual friends and colleagues, it had been known or strongly suspected for a while. She said she was telling Nadia this not to hurt her, but because she wanted Nadia to understand that the people around her had known, and none of them had chosen to tell her, not because they were bad people exactly, but because no one wanted to be the one to start something. Dara said she had finally gotten tired of watching someone be left out of the truth about her own life. Nadia read that last line twice. Someone be left out of the truth about her own life. She sat with it for a while. It was the most honest description of what had happened. That she had encountered, not betrayal, though it was that too, not dishonesty, though it was certainly that, but exclusion, being the only person in a room who does not have the full information, being smiled at by people who are holding a version of your life that they are choosing not to share. She wrote back to Dara and thanked her again. She told her that this information was something she was filing away and that she did not plan to act on it in any dramatic way, but that it mattered to her to know the full picture. Dara said she understood. They had a brief exchange that was genuinely warm, two people who had arrived at an unlikely form of honesty together. The settlement was finalized 11 weeks after the filing. Nadia kept the house, which had been in both names but which she had contributed to more significantly in the down payment. She received her equitable share of the joint savings, which now included documentation of the transferred funds that Marcus had been required to account for. She was not left rich, but she was left stable and independent and clear. She had her income, her work, her home, her dog, and a life that was fully her own for the first time since she had gotten married. On the day the settlement was signed, she drove home alone and sat in the living room for a while in the quiet. Pepper climbed into her lap. The music box was still on the window table. She picked it up and wound it one last time, and she listened to the song play all the way through. It was still beautiful, she thought. It was still a genuinely beautiful object. Whatever it had meant before it came to her, whatever story it carried, it had also been the thing that cracked the first piece of the wall she had been living inside. If Renata had not seen it and gone still, if Marcus's voice had not gone dead, she might have wound that music box up for years and never understood what it really was. She was glad she had noticed. She was glad she had said something. She put the music box in a box of things to donate, not angrily, not as a statement, just because she no longer needed it. Its chapter in her life was complete. She texted Jasmine. She said, "It's done." Jasmine replied in under a minute with a string of warm words and a dinner invitation for the weekend. Nadia said yes. She set her phone down and looked at the room around her. Her room, her house, her quiet. She opened her laptop and went back to the billing report she had been working on before all of this started. She finished the section she had left incomplete. She saved the file. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat at her own table in her own kitchen in her own life and let herself feel what she had spent the past several months working toward. Not triumph, not gloating. Just the steady, unperformable feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be, knowing what she knew, having done what she had done with her eyes open and her name on her own front door. Months passed. The adjustment was not always easy. There were evenings that were harder than she expected. There were moments when she missed not Marcus exactly, but the version of her life she had thought she was living before she learned the truth. She grieved that properly and privately. She let herself feel it without dramatizing it and without letting it reverse any of the decisions she had made. She expanded her client list at work and took on a higher-level billing contract with a medical group that increased her income by a meaningful margin. She repainted the living room a color she had always wanted but that Marcus had said was too bold. She planted things in the backyard that had nothing to do with anyone's preferences but hers. She took a short solo trip to a city she had always wanted to visit. She called her own mother more. She had long dinners with Jasmine. She found a therapist and started going every 2 weeks, not because she was falling apart, but because she had learned that understanding yourself better was its own form of protection. She did not speak to Marcus, Renata, or Diane unless something legal required it, and eventually nothing did. She heard through a mutual contact that Marcus and Alina had started officially seeing each other after the divorce was finalized. She did not feel what she might have expected to feel about that. She mostly felt that it made a kind of sense, and that she was glad she had not stayed in a house where that was the truth being hidden from her. She never regretted pulling the thread. She never regretted noticing. 14 months after the music box arrived in her hallway, Nadia sat on her repainted living room couch with Pepper asleep beside her and a cup of good tea in her hands and no music box on the window table, and she thought about what she would tell someone who was sitting inside a quiet that did not feel right. Someone who was smiling at dinners and feeling the weight of things no one was naming. Someone who had received beautiful object and suspected it was a lie wearing kindness's face. She would tell them this: pay attention to the thing that makes someone's voice go dead. That silence is data. Gather it, understand it. Move when you are ready, not when they think you will, and not before you know what you know. You do not need to perform anger to be serious. You do not need to be loud to be strong. You just need to keep your eyes open and trust what they see. That was what she had learned. That was what she intended to keep. If you have ever been the person in the room who smiled through a dinner, helped with the dishes, kept the peace, and felt something quietly wrong that no one else seemed to see, then you know exactly what Nadia felt before she started paying attention. I want to ask you to leave one word in the comments. Just one word for what you think Nadia felt the moment she finally understood what the music box really was. Your word might say something another person in this community needs to hear today. And if this story reached you in a way that matters, please share it with someone who might be in a quiet that doesn't feel right. They may need to know that noticing is the beginning of everything.